Hi everyone, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video after quite a while. Judging by the title, you can probably tell already that I'm gonna be looking back at my autumn or fall TBR. And I mean, originally this video was supposed to be me planning my fall TBR, but then I just didn't have time to do that. And so I'm gonna do this instead, and I'm gonna also give my thoughts on the books that I actually read. And then, if I have time, I'm also gonna talk about some books that I might read this winter. But I'm a big mood reader, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, just before we begin with the books, let me talk about the TBR in general. So basically, my main things were dark academia. I actually tried to match my outfit to that, but it's also Christmas, so that's why I have a Christmassy makeup. Anyway, that's beside the point. So my main themes in the TBR were dark academia. I have been obsessed with dark academia since I believe 2020, 21-ish, but I haven't actually read that many books, and so this year I decided to actually start reading dark academia books. So yeah, there were a couple of those in the TBR, and then also just gloomy dark vibes. And then there's one cozy fantasy, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, generally the TBR was kind of dark, gloomy, and yeah, and usually I don't like these kinds of books. I like to read for escapism, and reading about something sad or depressing is usually not something I would choose. But it kind of fits the fall vibe, so I did actually enjoy that. Alright, now let's go to the books. The first book is Vita Nostra by Sergei and Marina Dyachenko. This book I can't even begin to describe. It is a book about a 16-year-old girl who meets this stranger, and through a series of weird tasks she gets to a university of special technologies, which is basically a university she's never heard of, and she's kind of forced to go there. Well, she's definitely forced to go there. And there the story unfolds. She meets other people who are also forced to go there, and they study together. And the things they're studying are just strange. I guess you could call it magic, but it's not. This is not a boarding school kind of book. It's not like Harry Potter or anything like that. It's much more disturbing. And intellectually disturbing. At first, like I said, she's forced to go there, but then she kind of starts finding this weird pleasure in learning the things that she's learning, even though she can't see any sense in them, because what she's learning at first really does not make any sense to her or you as the reader. I was so confused. I was so confused while reading this book, and I read this for the dark academia vibes, but I don't know if that's... Well, it is. Technically, it is dark academia because it is in academic settings and it is disturbing. It is dark for sure. And you also have the aspect of studying way too much and putting way too much energy in your studies and in trying to please the teachers. But in this case, it's understandable because she's also kind of being blackmailed. So yeah, I don't know how else to describe this book than just intellectually disturbing. So if that's something that interests you, you might like this book. You know what? I'm really mad that this wasn't a standalone, because if it was a standalone, I think I would really enjoy this. But it was kind of long, and I don't want to say complicated, but sometimes it was a bit tough to read. It might have just been... I feel like the language was weird too, which might have just been the translation. Because I read it in Czech. But overall, I kind of liked it. It was definitely very different from any other book that I've ever read. I think I gave it 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. I mean, the thing is, objectively, I think it's a good book. I loved the idea of the sort of magic that's there, and also the way her discomfort was written, her mental discomfort was written, was so well done. Yeah, I would say it's a good book. And if you like weird speculative fiction kind of stories And if you like dark academia, you might like this as well. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is also dark academia, and this is the dark academia book, and that's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I don't think I have to explain what this book is about, because I feel like everyone who's been watching BookTube or consuming any kind of book media has heard about this book. I think I've seen this book everywhere, and I felt intrigued. I feel like I've always felt intrigued by the book, but I was also intimidated because it's a long book, and I knew that the language would be like lyrical, and I was a bit worried that it's going to be tough to read. But oh my god, it was amazing. It was amazing. Before I start gushing about this book, let me just briefly tell you what's it about, in case you haven't heard about it, but I think you have. But anyway, it's basically about an elite university in New England, I believe. So the narrator, the main character, one of the main characters, gets into this college, and he meets this group of other students who study classics, so like Greek, Latin, and they're a bit strange. They are a bit secluded. They're not like everyone else. And so obviously he's immediately drawn to them. Also, he had previously studied Greek. He starts studying with them, and shit goes down, you know? Like, things just start getting out of hand, basically. There's also a murder, which, this is not a spoiler. This is what's interesting about this book. It's kind of like a reverse murder mystery. Like, from the beginning, you know who's killed and who killed them, but you don't know why. And so, you know what is gonna happen. But from the beginning, you're trying to figure out, like, why. And I really like that. I'm not usually a murder mystery kind of girl, and this isn't a murder mystery per se, it's more like literary fiction, but with the added twist, let's say, and I really like that. What I love the most is obviously the language, like not obviously, but I think most people who like this book enjoyed it for the language, mostly because, oh my god, the language was so beautiful. I devoured every word, and usually, and I'm not proud of this, but like I read really fast, and usually I don't read every word when I'm reading a book. I just like, I don't want to say I skim through it, but I don't read every word. I just like, you know, but this I read every word, and I enjoyed myself so much, and I would definitely recommend it. Truly has the best dark academia vibes out there. From all the books I've ever read, this was just, like, the vibes were just immaculate. The only thing I did not love was the ending, but that's just, I mean, it was fitting to the book, so I think it was a good ending for the book. Happier ending would not fit the book, so I guess it makes sense. But I didn't love that. But yeah, that's the only thing. Otherwise, amazing. 5 out of 5. Would definitely recommend. The next book is Withering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I gotta say I did not love this. This is a classic, you probably know that, and it's about Heathcliff and Catherine, and it's this story of revenge, basically, because Heathcliff was growing up with Catherine and her brother, and the brother hated Heathcliff, and he bullied him and was horrible to him, and then Heathcliff disappeared, and then some years later he came back as a wealthy man, and he started enacting his revenge. So yeah, it is a story of revenge, and I get that. I mean, I 100% understand that Heathcliff was pissed and traumatized, and I get that he would be horrible to the people who did this to him. But the thing is, the whole book was just fucking miserable. Like, everybody, all of the characters were just miserable. They were all horrible. I hated every single one of them. There was maybe one character that I didn't hate. And, okay, to be fair to this book, the first half I liked. I enjoyed that, and I was enjoying the language and the vibes. Like, it was very gloomy, and I think I read it when it was kind of gloomy outside as well. It was like raining and stuff, and so the vibes were good. But the second half, I was just like, really? This is just, I don't know, like, and this goes back to the fact that I don't love depressing books. And maybe I shouldn't have picked it up because it is a book like that, and I should have known better, but oh my god. Yeah, I didn't enjoy that. I'm very sad about it because I want to read more classics and I've been really trying to read more classics this year. But this is no. I'm sorry, but no. Also, I know that the book was supposed to make me feel like that, so I'm not saying the book isn't well written at all. I think there is a reason why it is a classic, but also it was just absolutely not for me. Okay, the next classic I want to talk about is one I actually enjoyed, unlike the Withering Heights, and that's Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I don't have a lot to say about this book. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't like a 5-star read or anything. It was interesting, definitely, to read it, because it's a very old book, or quite an old book, and there are definitely hints at a sapphic relationship, even though I'm not sure if the author actually wanted it to be like that. Like, when you read it as a modern reader, you just know, like, when she says she loves her, it's not just friend love. It's actually full-on obsession. I didn't say what's it about though. Okay, let me rectify that. So there are basically two main characters. One is a, I don't know, 16-year-old girl, I think, something like that. I don't remember her name, but she is living with her father. They're pretty much secluded, so they do get some visitors, but not very often. And one day, they are visited by this magnificent woman called Carmilla, and the girl basically becomes obsessed with her, and she cannot find any fault with her, and she's just obsessed. She loves Carmilla. Carmilla is the best, you know. But Carmilla is also a vampire, and yeah, she's kind of using her new friend. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I think this is all I can say, really, because it's a very short book. So what I said was basically like half the book. It was enjoyable. It was interesting also to read it. And yeah, if you want something for like the spooky season, this is really good. And it's also very approachable, I would say, for a classic, because it's short and the language isn't too bad. So yeah, I guess I would recommend it, even though I was slightly disappointed because everybody was really like highly recommending it. But it's fine. Maybe my hopes were just too high. It was still a good book. All right, next we got some young adult. That's These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I don't know what to think here because I read this book really, really quickly, like in 2 days maybe. And while I was reading it, it was kind of enjoyable. But then looking back at it, I don't know, like looking back, I just don't think it's such a great book, which is really sad because I was really excited about this, like really excited. These Violent Delights is about Roma and Juliet. So, you know, it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, or at least I think it's 1920s. And that's what I loved about this book, the setting, because I never read anything from Shanghai from the beginning of the 20th century, and that was really interesting. Even though it was fiction, obviously, it was still pretty interesting. But to be honest, the rest I did not love so much. So, okay, Roma and Juliet are heirs to two rival gangs, and basically, relatively at the beginning of the book, you find out that they used to be friends and more, but then something happened, somebody betrayed the other, and now they're just enemies again. But they have to join forces to basically fight this common enemy. And the thing is, maybe my expectations were just not right, because I did go into it mostly for the romance, and that wasn't really there much. I mean, there was a little bit, but not... I didn't love it, and also it felt very insta-lovey. Like, the reason they fell in love in the first place, I was like, I don't see it, you know? I don't see it, but okay. So the romance wasn't as good as I expected it to be, and then the other part of the plot, like fighting the common enemy, that was interesting, but also I didn't care as much as I probably should have. So that's why the book kind of disappointed me. But at the same time, all of these thoughts, I only had them after I read the book. Like, when I was reading the book, it had good entertainment value. It just didn't give me exactly what I wanted it to give. But yeah, also this book, I'm not really sure why I put it on the TBR, because it doesn't have like fall vibes at all. But I don't know, maybe the angst that's there, I sort of associated with fall and put it on the list. I don't know, but yeah. So there's that. Alright, next book is also a young adult, which is interesting because I didn't read a lot of young adult books this year compared to previous years. I think I'm kind of not growing out of it, because I think you can read young adult, middle grade, like your whole life, but maybe now I'm more in the mood for adult books. Anyway, this one is young adult, and it's Ace of Spades by Farida, Abike, Mide. Okay, let me summarize, or try to summarize the plot really quickly without spoilers. It's basically like Gossip Girl, but with much more social commentary and also way darker. Two main characters are two black students at a very prestigious private high school in the US who get targeted by this anonymous person called Aces. And Aces basically shares or exposes information about these two students, and it starts getting worse and worse. Like, the information that they share is starting to get more and more personal and important, and it's starting to really feel like it's gonna screw up their entire future. And that's all I'm gonna say. I'm really trying not to give any spoilers, but the thing is, once you finish the book, you kind of look at the whole thing differently. My camera stopped recording, but anyway, where was I? So yeah, Aces. It was chilling. It was more of a psychological thriller than anything, and it was a really good book. I need to begin with that, because it was a really good book, and I can't say I enjoyed it because I felt physically ill at times, but it was a really like good experience, but not in a way that I would enjoy myself reading. It's like I said, like the shit that was happening to the main characters was sickening, and I felt so bad for them. Wow, just wow. I can't believe somebody actually like managed to write that and pull it off, because not only like the idea, but the way it was done was so good, in my opinion. And I kind of promised myself I'm gonna read less US-centric books, because honestly, I've read too much. And a lot of the books that are recommended on BookTube and Bookstagram are US-centric, and I'm just... no hate to the US, okay? But I don't want to read about just this one country and its issues, because it's just... I don't even live there. I don't even want to live there. So why would I keep reading about it? The answer to that is that people keep writing good books about it. That's why I keep reading about it. But I'm trying to actively like read other than US-centric books. But I'm really glad that I read this one, even though it kind of broke this little rule that I have, because wow, it was so good. I just really wholeheartedly recommend this book, especially if you're from the US and the UK, I guess, but also to the people who are not from these countries, because even though the issues that were dealt with in this book, which was mainly institutionalized racism, but also other topics, like these issues are different in different countries, like they manifest differently, but they are still there. So I think it's interesting to basically anyone, or like for anyone to read this. And yeah, I'm really glad I did. Also, I listened to it as an audiobook, and I also recommend that because it just added to the experience. Just read it. Just read it. It was really good. It's also making me emotional again, even though I've read it like... I think I read it like a month ago. So that just shows that this book is strong. The next book I want to talk about is a complete opposite to the books that I've previously talked about, and that's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So this book is a cozy fantasy about an orc who decides to open a cafe in a town where nobody has ever heard about coffee. And it's so cute. I didn't want to have high expectations because everybody's been obsessed with this book, and I was like, if I have high expectations, I'm just gonna be disappointed. Like, it can't be that good, but it really was that good. I listened to it as an audiobook, which was also a great experience because the author himself narrated the audiobook, and oh my god, it just makes me feel warm inside. Like, I'm definitely gonna read this again, or probably listen to it again, because I really liked the audiobook format. It's making me emotional, I'm sorry. It's just such a nice book, and it has the found family trope. It has like coffee and pastries, and the way the coffee and pastries are described, I actually felt like I can smell it from the way it was described, and it's like a warm blanket, and oh my god, it's so wholesome. It's just so wholesome, and oh my god, I'm so happy that I read it. After all the sad and depressing books that I've read, this was like a warm hug, honestly. I loved it. I loved it so much, and I would absolutely recommend. Now, there are 2 more books on my TBR, but I have not read them yet. One is Notes of a Crocodile, which I actually have right here. Yeah, okay. Notes of a Crocodile by Qiu Miaoin. This is a Taiwanese classic, which is happening at a university, so maybe a bit of a dark academia, and it's also queer. It features some queer relationships and some queer characters, which for a classic, I think that's great. Yeah, it's late 1980s Taipei, and it's a coming-of-age story of a group of misfits, and I'm just excited. The other book I actually have here as well, but it's like way over there, and I don't feel like going there, and that's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. The reason I want to read this is also feels a little bit like dark academia-ish. Not in the classical dark academia sense, it's just there are 2 like rival academics or magicians, I think. And yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the book, but I loved Piranesi by the same author, and I have this book already, and I just felt like, why not read it? However, I didn't read it, and I might just move it to next fall, because my winter TBR is already kind of packed. But we'll see. I mean, I'm planning to read a lot this winter, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, let's go to my winter TBR now, because this video is already long, so let's just go through it really quickly. So the first book is The Vanishing Egg by Mette Jakobsen, and I've already read this book. I don't want to stay with it too long. It just wasn't what I expected. I was expecting like wholesomeness and warmth and cozy vibes, and it was actually kind of sad, and it did have winter vibes, but it was sad, and I did not want it to be sad. So yeah, I did not enjoy that a lot. I would not recommend, really. I don't know. So that was the first book. Then we've got My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, and this, for some reason, really gives me like winter vibes. So hopefully I'll get to it. It's about a woman who just decides to sleep for a whole year using sleeping pills. Or that's what I know about the book. Then we've got Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I actually put this on my TBR like very last minute, but someone recommended this book, and it actually looks pretty good. And I want to read more fantasy this year. Like in 2023, I want to read more fantasy, because I haven't actually read a lot of fantasy in 2022, which is really sad, because it's like one of my favorite genres. Then we've got Dead Voices by Catherine Arden, which is a middle grade sort of horror-ish book. And yeah, it's supposed to be a bit creepy, but like it's a middle grade, so because I'm scared of everything, so I can't handle like an actual horror book. But this is middle grade, so it should be fine. And I read the first book in this like small series by this author called Small Spaces, and I enjoyed that one. So yeah, I think I'm gonna like Dead Voices as well. And then the last one are Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Bashardust. And it's also a fantasy, and it's like a sort of feminist fantasy reimagining of the Snow White fairy tale. So looks great, sounds great. Yeah, so those are the books that I might get to this winter, but as I've mentioned in this video, I am a mood reader, and even though I like making TBRs, especially these like seasonal ones, I often don't stick to them, and that's okay. I'm not mad about it, but yeah, so it's possible I'm not gonna read any of these books. It's possible. So yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you feel like it, let me know in the comments like what you read this fall and what you're planning to read in the winter. And I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!